America did not begin with hope. It began with fear, with smoke, and with the sound of distant gunfire echoing through the darkness before dawn. Imagine opening your eyes, knowing that before the sun sets, the world you know may no longer exist. This was the reality for the people who would one day call themselves Americans. The United States was not born in the quiet halls of debate or on carefully written parchment. It was born in chaos, forged in war, desperation, and blood. From the very beginning, conflict wasn't just a chapter in American history, it was the foundation. Every generation that followed would be shaped by war, tested by violence, and forced to redefine what freedom truly meant. By the mid-1700s, 13 British colonies stretched along the eastern edge of North America. What began as fragile settlements struggling to survive had grown into prosperous communities with their own identity, economy, and ambitions. But with prosperity came resentment. Colonists were taxed heavily by a distant king who offered no representation and showed little concern for their growing demands. Reforms were requested, petitions were sent, and warnings were ignored. When patience finally ran out, the unthinkable became inevitable. In July of 1776, the colonies declared their independence, fully aware that doing so meant standing against the most powerful empire on earth. The war that followed was not glorious. It was cold, brutal, and uncertain. American forces were poorly trained, poorly supplied, and vastly outmatched. Soldiers froze, starved, and deserted. Victory often felt impossible. Yet, under George Washington's leadership, the Continental Army survived long enough for the tide to slowly shift. European rivals of Britain, especially France, saw an opportunity in the rebellion and joined the fight. After years of suffering, the stunning American victory at Yorktown changed everything. In 1783, Britain surrendered its claim, and the United States became independent, exhausted, fragile, and deeply uncertain of its future. Freedom, however, did not bring stability. The first system of government, the Articles of Confederation, failed almost immediately. It created a weak union where states acted more like rivals than partners. Rebellions broke out, debts piled up, and the nation teetered on the edge of collapse. In response, leaders gathered to rewrite the rules entirely. The Constitution was born out of compromise, fear, and contradiction. The issue of slavery nearly tore the entire process apart, but the delegates chose unity at least for a while. George Washington was elected president, not because he sought power, but because no one else seemed capable of holding the fragile nation together. Even then, division came quickly. Political parties formed, arguments over federal power intensified, and distrust spread like wildfire. When Washington stepped down after 2 terms, he proved that power could be surrendered peacefully, a revolutionary idea at the time. His successor, John Adams, faced growing unrest at home and rising threats from abroad. Laws meant to silence critics instead fueled outrage. In 1800, Thomas Jefferson defeated Adams, marking the first peaceful transfer of power between rival political parties, a quiet moment that may have saved the young republic from itself. The nation soon expanded beyond anything its founders had imagined. In 1803, the Louisiana Purchase nearly doubled the country's size overnight. This expansion fueled ambition, wealth, and power, but it also unleashed incredible violence. Native American nations were pushed aside, treaties were broken, and entire cultures were destroyed in the name of progress. At the same time, slavery spread westward alongside the settlers, deepening the nation's greatest contradiction. How could a country built on the ideal of liberty survive while millions of its people lived in chains? As the decades passed, presidents rose and fell, wars were fought, and the nation's internal tensions hardened. Andrew Jackson's presidency defined an era of forceful expansion and brutal policy. The removal of Native Americans became law, court rulings were ignored, and thousands died on the Trail of Tears. The United States grew stronger on the world stage, but ever more divided within its own borders. By the mid-1800s, compromise was no longer enough. The question of slavery consumed politics, poisoned every debate, and pushed the nation ever closer to collapse. When Abraham Lincoln was elected president in 1860, the breaking point finally arrived. Southern states chose secession over submission, forming a new nation built explicitly on the institution of slavery. Before Lincoln even took office, the Union was unraveling. The Civil War erupted soon after, transforming America into its own battlefield. It was a war of unimaginable scale and brutality. Brothers fought against brothers. Entire cities burned to the ground. Over 600,000 lives were lost. The very survival of the United States hung in the balance. Lincoln managed to preserve the Union and end slavery, but victory came at a devastating cost. His assassination shocked the nation and left the period of Reconstruction incomplete and fragile. Freed slaves were promised equality, but were soon abandoned to face violence, discrimination, and terror. Southern states regained control and passed laws that erased much of the progress almost overnight. The country moved forward, but the wounds from that conflict never truly healed. As the 19th century progressed, America industrialized at a breathtaking pace. Railroads stretched across the continent, cities exploded with growth, and massive fortunes were built overnight. But this rapid progress was shadowed by corruption, inequality, and social unrest. Workers fought for basic rights, strikes often turned violent, and powerful political machines ruled major cities with fear and greed. Meanwhile, Native Americans continued to suffer as their remaining lands were seized and any resistance was crushed. Progress came, but it was never clean. By the late 1800s, the United States had transformed once again, this time, into an imperial power. The war with Spain marked a major turning point, pushing America beyond its borders and into the arena of global influence. Territories were claimed in the Caribbean and the Pacific. Overseas power expanded, and the nation stepped onto the world stage as something entirely new and formidable. As the 20th century approached, America carried with it every scar of its past victories that were earned through violence, ideals that were stained by contradiction, and a national power that was shaped by war. The truth is uncomfortable, but it's clear. America was born in war. It expanded through conflict, and it has always been defined by struggle. Each generation faced its own battles, both foreign and internal. Some of these wars strengthened the nation, while others exposed its deepest failures. But none of them left the country unchanged. The United States is not a story of constant, easy triumph. It is the story of survival through profound uncertainty, of high ideals being tested by a harsh reality, and of a nation forever wrestling with its own identity. And that is why understanding America's past truly matters. Because the decisions made in those moments of fear, desperation, and conflict continue to shape the world we all live in today. This isn't just history. It's a warning, and the story is far from over. Thanks for watching. If you found this perspective valuable, consider subscribing for more.